think something new under the sun. You can't take back them things you already done. No. You blame things that you do on somebody else. No. But they all see is you need help. But still you try so hard to cover up your games. You try so hard, hoping that one day something gon' change. You waste all of your time covering up your tracks. Spend all your days running away. You gotta watch your back, and that's the facts. You spend so much of your life scheming and trying to get over. Got you wondering why you come around. All you get is cold shoulder. Yeah, you try so hard to cover up your games. You try so hard, hoping that one day something gon' change. You try so hard. Yeah. You try so hard. You try so hard. Yeah. You try so hard. Give me, Can't run away.
Welcome to the next session here. My name is Lena. I am the host for Copenhagen Pride here in the debate tent. We have two very exciting people here who's going to be speaking with us for the next 45 minutes. Just before then, a little bit of house rules. If you don't want your neck filmed, if you haven't done your hair or for any reason don't want to be on camera, you need to move behind the desk. Other than that, we just want to make sure that we create a safe space for everyone, so please make sure you're being respectful and open-minded towards everyone. I'll hand it over to Kristine, who's going to be moderating this, which is Beirut Pride. So if anyone was showed up for the UK, the lost place, unfortunately we had to swap last minute for Beirut Pride, but I'm sure this is going to be just as big of a learning opportunity, and thank you so much for being able to swap out last minute. We'll open up the floor for questions in the end if there's time for it, but otherwise, enjoy. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Kristine Garina. My pronouns are she, her. I am from Riga, Latvia. I represent Riga Pride and Baltic Pride, and I'm a former president of European Pride Organisers Association. It's not been a year yet, so I can still throw the title around. And our guest today is Hadi Damien, who is the founder of Beirut Pride, one of the organisers of Beirut Pride, and Co-President of International Pride Organisers Association, InterPride. And I remember when you were elected in that position, I thought that it's how wonderful it is that our Pride movement, international Pride movement leadership, is not just European and North American representation, that we're different and that we show that the Pride can be very, very different and it's all equally important.
Correct. And this is when you start growing and getting out of your own city, of your own country, and you start facing different issues. You start to understand that the topics that you elevate, that you share with an international audience, the way of doing things, start clashing with people. You start seeing things with more clarity. You realize that some people use social justice language and in reality they don't practice what they preach. You also understand the limitations of people. You start also learning that goodwill and good faith are different from the impact. It's a lot of growth and understanding of international dynamics.
And speaking of international understanding, most people internationally would ask a very obvious question: is there pride in Beirut?
Well, unfortunately, in 2015, when I was following marriage equality in the US, and before that in 2013, when we were witnessing also marriage equality in France, the question I was asking, and the question my friends were asking, was, we have a lot of LGBT organizations in Lebanon. We play host to the first LGBT organization in the Arab world. Yet, despite all the money that is flowing in, despite all the speech and all the talks of progress, we're still not doing well. Justice uses a section from our criminal code that stipulates that unnatural sexual intercourse are punishable, to prosecute non-straight relationships, including people who would look not conforming to the gender that the others believe they are. So if a man is a little bit, quote-unquote, too feminine, if a woman is too, quote-unquote, butch, masculine, etc., you know, the police may, and other individuals may want to scratch this article from the criminal code. And we were like, okay, we need to move forward. We're asking for the basic thing. We started reaching out to LGBT organizations, to activists. We started reaching out to some politicians we knew, members of parliament, former ministers, etc. And then we realized that we needed to create a political momentum for the politicians to be able to deliver the decriminalization. And we wanted something big. We wanted something that will gather the press, that the press will be able to understand. We wanted something that resonates well. We understand geopolitically the place of Lebanon. And then you're like, it has to be a pride. And in the beginning, we were wondering, is it going to be called the Lebanese Pride, Lebanon Pride? Is it going to be called? And then I remember some people said, no, it has to be called Beirut Pride. Like every city has its pride. And then we're like, okay, good, let's go for it. So this is how we started it. The goal is to build political momentum for the delivery of decriminalization of LGBT status in Lebanon.
And how do you think the pride, whatever it looks like in Beirut, and we want to hear about that a bit more, what does it look like, but how does that help the goal?
Listen, it had the goal from the very early beginning. I remember we launched communication because the first edition happened in 2017, and we launched communication around 3, 4 a.m. on Thursday, and Pride was starting on Sunday. It was scheduled to take place Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So from the beginning, it was an 8-week program. And we launched communication. We put our phones on airplane mode, and each, went to sleep. And then when we woke up the next day, we had received a deluge of messages. The press had already started talking about it. And the two very significant messages we received were, wow, you made it. And the second one was, what a courage. In full transparency, it took me so much for me to understand why people were talking about courage. I did not get why it was so complicated to bring together people around the 17th of May, which is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Transphobia, so a date that people know, and that is in the calendar, and have a series of events, panel discussions, screenings of movies, shows, workshops, parties, talks, everything that needs to happen, outdoor events, a parade as well, a march, etc. And we knew from the beginning that things will not always be easy. We knew that sometimes we'll have to be online because it will not be possible to be in a physical place. We did not expect that in 2020 we will be hit by COVID and that everybody will be online. We knew that we would be facing attacks. We accounted for some. We were surprised by others. But it was a part of the process, and so far Beirut Pride has been reported in more than 330 articles in more than 18 languages, and many reported because it's exotic and sensational, and others are capable of understanding the value of, let's say, the only pride of the Arab world.
So do you think that Pride in your context, in Lebanon context, still works as an advocacy tool? Does it still give you the tools you need to change the legislation, to talk to the politicians? Does it work?
Listen, yes, of course. I tell you why it works. I believe there are two approaches to look into anything. The essentialist one and the functional one. The essentialist one will tell you what is Pride about. And we can answer this by saying that Pride is the biggest performance of visibility. And there is the functionalist approach, which asks the question, what is the function of Pride? And again, it delivers the biggest performance of visibility. And the root of all of it, because criminalization is a form of LGBT hate, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, etc., they all stem from misunderstanding of what the other is, based on sexual orientation and gender identity and expressions. So when we get to put the humanity of the people across the spectrum of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression in front of the others who are not getting what this is, magic happens. In the heart of people, in the soul of people, in the brains of people. Some of them are more difficult because they will be more resisting. Some have to save face. They can come from certain political configurations, from some religious hierarchies. I speak about religious hierarchies because, for example, it's always easier for somebody who is a faithful to change opinions rather than somebody who is a part of, let's say, Christian, Muslim, or Jewish leadership. It gets more complicated for them to explain to the people why suddenly they understand that homosexual people are not bringing the end of the world. So yes, Pride is very important because it takes the realities of LGBT folks and puts them in the public space. And one of the main clashes when I speak to other Pride organizers is that Lebanon, for its geopolitical location, and obviously we're sandwiched between three neighbors. We have to the north and to the east Syria, that is not very fond of Lebanon, at least the Syrian administration. And then beyond the southern border of Lebanon, We have we have Palestine, we have Israel, we have other occupied territories, and then the third neighbor to the east is to the west of the fish of the Mediterranean, and they tend to be the nicest. So in this situation, Lebanon today, all of its institutions are crippled. The judiciary is crippled, the banking institutions are crippled, the economic one, the political one, etc. So Beirut Pride goes beyond, advocacy for LGBT folks. We are working on LGBT matters. We are 10% of the Lebanese society, but the goal is to have a blueprint that succeeds for other social issues that need to move forward. Visibility is key. You cannot change stereotypes when you are still hiding and when you are not answering what needs to be answered.
Is there, we know that the criminalization exists. In the penal code there is a law. What is the reality of that law? Because it seems like you have that and you have the criminalization, but then you also go out in the streets and you are visible, so there is a bit of a disconnect between that. What is the practicality of that criminalization?
I don't know if this is the genius or the perversion of being a lawmaker when you devise legislation that, with many loopholes that you get to apply as you see fit. I see a lot of people are agreeing with this statement, but what I can tell you is the article, in particular section 534 from the Lebanese Criminal Code, stipulates that unnatural sexual intercourse are punishable with up to 1 year in jail. The judiciary has not been putting people in jail. They have been, however, arresting people. The police arrest, and it's not the fanciest and the most elegant arrests. They are brutal arrests. They are very rough and unnecessary rough arrests. And I would later on experience it in 2018. We'll get back to it, I suppose, since it's a milestone in the trajectory of Beirut Pride. The issue is, when people are arrested, first you have to go through the humiliation of the arrest. You have to justify yourself to the police officers who are obviously not the most sensible ones. They take your phone, they go through your conversations, they go through your pictures, they go through your contact details, they ask questions about who is who. They can even go in the history, browse porn, browse other websites, try to create connections that in their mind argues that you are engaging in same-sex intercourse. And then you're arrested, you're placed in detention, or even you are released if you get to pay some money. Then you will be called to the tribunal. You have to justify yourself and to answer questions before a judge. Then if they decide to condemn you, then you will be carrying on your criminal code, on your police record for 10 years, the mention of either, in Arabic of course, of either sodomite or sexual pervert or sexual deviant, or homosexual or gay. And when you hold the Lebanese passport, for you to go to Europe, for you to go to Ivory Coast, for you to go to other countries, you need to have to ask for a visa. And some visa applications require that you present a police record. And when you get your police record, you have to go to a police station, to some police station, and ask for your police record. Let's say that it's a very embarrassing situation for people to ask for their police record, and the guy will be looking at the computer and looking at you, and it's very uncomfortable. It's very, very uncomfortable, and it's unnecessary, and it's humiliating. And it's a baseline, right? That needs to be addressed, and needs to be revoked. Contrary to other countries, Lebanon doesn't have a section in the criminal code that says 2 men having sex are punished or 2 women having sex are punished. It's not because the criminal code is into non-binary lingo. It's simply because the way it was devised, and Lebanon was under French mandate, mandated by the League of the Nations, that would later on become the UN, and the mandate was operated by the French administration. And back then, France was in its 3rd republic. Now they are in the 5th republic. And obviously, when they left Lebanon in 1943, they left a criminal code behind them, and this is still the same criminal code that we are using. It underwent some updates. This is not one of the sections that were updated. However, many times, courts in Lebanon, tribunals in Lebanon of first instance, as well as courts of appeal, have ruled that they use the same article, that same-sex, that unnatural sexual intercourse is punishable, to argue that same-sex intercourse is not unnatural, and therefore it cannot use to prosecute people, two men engaging in sex or two women engaging in sex. This is the same text that was used also not to prosecute trans people. Obviously, other judges and prosecution challenged the decision. The Court of Appeal reconfirmed it. We know also that regional prosecutors also refused to prosecute folks for homosexuality. We also know that the former military prosecutor also refused to prosecute army men who were brought before him because they were caught engaging in lewd activity in the shower.
I know that you have been arrested for your activism for doing Pride. I remember that it was news. It was big news. And let me ask you this: is visibility international of that incident of being arrested for doing Pride something that we take for granted sometimes? Did that help? Is there international pressure that can help in this situation in the Lebanon context?
Listen, yes. One of the reasons why we called it Pride actually is because we knew that the international press, when you speak to them about LGBT matters, the only thing they will understand is Pride. So you need to give them a lingo they can relate to. And, you know, I teach political communication, so I do engage with a lot of press people. Some are exceptional, but they are not a majority. So media visibility is important as long as you get to be able at a certain moment to communicate effectively with the journalists and ensure that a critical number of pieces are pushing in the direction that needs to be pushed for. This is key. And for us to contribute to a good relationship with journalists, what we do with Beirut Pride is, number one, we immediately answer journalists. Immediately. Like when a journalist says, I want to run a piece, we don't answer them in 2 days, or we tell them, oh, I'm going to the beach, I answer you tomorrow. We immediately answer. Number two, we record all of our conversations, the oral conversations, and we always prefer to answer on writing. They ask one sentence, sometimes you answer like, like we answer very long answers, so they have all the context which they can take whatever they want to. There have been a lot, like a good, trustful relationship between the folks of Beirut Pride and journalists, and this enabled us to have articles that are very decent. In small countries like Lebanon, for example, it's very important to always keep a foot in the international. It's not only in the Pride space. It's in business. I was talking to some Danish people who were saying that also in their case, they always want to be in connection with countries or to be also outside of Denmark. I don't know, but for sure that press visibility is key. It's sure that when people look at all the media clips you have received and the media mentions, they may disagree with what you do, but they cannot argue that there is no interest for what you do. Especially when you get to speak to media people across all the political spectrum. And this is very important.
I like your point that you need to answer now. You can't wait for 2 days. Well, I suppose you can't do that if you're in jail. So you have a support system that was in place.
Kristine. But that was a problem, Kristine, because I remember I left the police station at 3 p.m. It was on the 15th of May 2018. And I was in the taxi and I was heading home. And I had just gotten access to my phone. And I see that the very glorious Associated Press has released a paper in which they were explaining what was happening during my interrogation. Sorry, but my interrogation was me and 5 other officers. Like there were no lawyers, there was absolutely nobody. And I can tell you for a fact that no police officer did tell them what happened. It didn't go like this. Hey, it was quite annoying. Another also situation with the press, I remember there was this media who reached out also after the arrest because it was very sensational news and everybody wanted to talk about it. And they asked questions, I answered, and then when the article was released, I was shocked. I'm like, I told you that was incorrect. It didn't go like this. And then the guy tells me, oh, sorry, it's not me. My editor decided to write it this way. I'm like, but this is factually incorrect. So yeah. I told you, you learn a lot. At the beginning, you're angry. When you recall it, you get you get agitated. But eventually, you understand also, and you start accepting things without wanting to change them.
That's the media side, but what about the international community, LGBTQI community, the Pride community? We often get asked, what can we do? Are there any mechanisms we can employ to help, to bring attention of our politicians, of decision makers? Does that work internationally?
It depends on the country, on the relationship between the country and the other inquiring country. Listen. When you're arrested and when you leave your detention and when you go to social media and when you check your phone and you see that you have received a lot of messages and a lot of support from people, first, you're too exhausted. So when you're seeing this deluge of messages, you feel guilty not responding on the spot. And it will take some time to get back to people. And some people, when you answer them a week later, will be very upset. I was worried about you, you only answered me now. Dude. And I tell you why, dude, because what happened is on the 14th of May, 2018, during the second edition of Beirut Pride, some people were not happy that Beirut Pride was happening. So they went on the website of Beirut Pride, took our program, and they rewrote the program to say that it is full, Beirut Pride is full of prostitution and drugs and so on and so forth. So everybody was very triggered and devastated, and calls started pouring in to the police, to the prosecutors, etc., to the politicians, and eventually 12 police officers cracked down on an event of Beirut Pride, which was a reading of a theater play about homophobia. And obviously, here you understand the traumas of people, because when the police arrived in civil, most people decided to leave, obviously. Gay guys who are older than me, back then I was 29 when this happened, so people in their late 30s who had lived more intense period of repression in Lebanon. One of them literally said that he went to the bathroom, he took his phone, he deleted all of his pictures. He didn't even go through them to select what to delete. And some people really lived intense things just through my arrest. So anyway, 12 police officers were there. They started asking what Beirut Pride is about, why we're doing what we're doing, etc., etc. The superiors called them, I had the superiors talk to me, and then we agreed that the next day I will go to the police station at 11 a.m. And they said, okay, continue your event, but don't do your theater reading. And that was it. Obviously here you start to have dissonance within LGBT folks, some saying we should continue no matter what, others saying no, we need to protect the venue, others saying yeah, but the most oppressed among us will be attacked. So, you know, everybody now is will be contributing to the conversation, which is fair, as long as we have all the facts and all the éléments de langage, or the talking points to know what you're talking about. And then later on, 3 police officers entered the room. They asked, where's Hadi? It's me, you have to come with us to the police station. So I go with them to the police station. A woman there was a lawyer and joined me in the car. It was a civilian car that didn't even have a number, plaque d'immatriculation, so it was like you wouldn't know where you're going. But anyway, I went to the police station where they put the sex workers, homosexuals, you know, people who play, the gamblers, etc. So it's the morality police. I go there, and they put me in this cell that is supposedly made to fit about 4 people. We were around 24 folks. Don't ask me how we fit, it wasn't comfortable. And it was obviously very shocking because you would discover that some people have been in detention for more than 3 months awaiting their hearing, their court hearing. and it's not a place that is equipped. The bathroom is nothing but a hole in the floor. You have no shower, etc. So the situation is really, really upsetting. And then the next day, the conversation happened between me and the head of the police, the morality police, in the presence of a few officers. There was a back and forth. The prosecutor of Beirut decided to suspend all the events of Beirut Pride. Then he would prosecute me for organizing events that incite debauchery, and then I'd be released. But what happened here is it's the stress in the city, is people feeling totally disheartened, people saying that the moment I started believing in the country, now things are good. People literally lived. It was something very negative for people to go through. And obviously you always have people who are a little bit vicious, who will say that, yeah, this person definitely staged his arrest with the police to appear like a hero in the press. And some others who would say, this person is not gay, he pretends to be gay to have media visibility. And you're like, and this is actually something that conversations with, on these topics were important for me when I started engaging with the international space. Because this is when I realized that what I was going through was not something singular and particular to me. And then later on, when I would be witnessing very vicious attacks and cancel campaigns on other Pride organizers, I would be like, ooh, my babies in Beirut are very soft compared to others. And here it makes you think about where we come from, what we've been going through, the things you see on TV, in movies, how you relate to them. You engage with diplomats who want to speak to you, and the people who only want to speak to you because you were arrested, and later on in 2020 when Beirut had the huge Beirut port explosion, and a few weeks ago when there was the Israeli strike in the Beirut suburb, there are always people who will only speak to you when there is a drama, when there is a mission. And it's funny because they send you a message, oh, I hope you're doing well. And then you tell them, yeah, let's talk in the next few days. And then they disappear. And then you send them the message with time. At 35, you can do it. When you tell them, you know what, I really don't want to engage with you. Because I do not like this association of only drama. And I believe it takes some gut and some courage and some peace to tell some people, I don't want to engage with you because I don't like this association.
There was an interesting panel last year at one of the conferences that I was on the panel, and there was a person from Beirut talking about queer life in Beirut, and I wouldn't be able to do a direct quote, but it was something along the lines of, yeah, we do have queer life, we do have community, we do have queer clubs, we're fine. How do you engage that part of the community? Do you have to? And it's almost like, well, the bar is too low.
I'm very happy to know that people are fine. And I believe that this is the reason why we do the work we do. We want people to be fine, we want people to be happy. And I come from the school of thought that says that when people are good, things move forward. I believe you're talking about the Europe Pride event and the conference that happened there. I'm not going to, because we should not turn things personal. Also, this is another thing you learn. It's also very disheartening because at a certain moment, and this is the strength of Beirut Pride, we always refuse to take money from government, from embassies, from organizations, etc. And we always wanted to speak to absolutely everybody, the angels and the devils, in the media and in politics. And obviously a lot of people attacked us for this. I'm saying this because many individuals and all LGBT organizations are funded. And at a certain moment, the funding for LGBT people were happening through LGBT organizations. A few years ago, this money started coming to any organization that claims to do LGBT work. And which is great because you want everybody to engage on the LGBT conversation. But people need to be well equipped when they do so. The issue is, when Lebanon started its financial and socio-economic collapse in 2019, of which we're still not over, many individuals just mushroomed the researchers, those who look into LGBT matters, those who sell services to organizations, and they see when there are conferences, they just engage with the organizers because, you know, a good trip is always interesting. And it's fine, right? Not everybody would like my approach. Some people would like a softer approach. Others would like somebody who looks different. It's important to get communication across different groups of people. I still struggle, Kristine, with the ethics of this. Yes, of course, if you're comfortable with yourself and your skin, if you learn how to love yourself and to treat your trauma and to do the healing you need to do, obviously you will feel good. And also in full transparency, people will not be arresting me on the street because they think that I may be gay. I teach at university, I speak many languages, I'm very comfortable with myself, I have a big mouth, I'm quite independent in the way I conduct myself. And I know, and I'm not a, I'm not a softie. I have a hard, thick skin. And yet I acknowledge that things are complicated. And I wonder, if things are so complicated to me, how horrible and miserable they may be to other people. And I know that I can contribute to making things better. Not because I'm a savior, but because there are things that you can tweak and change differently. Yeah. And I still don't understand why my friends, who the gay ones, who have much more money than me, some of them still refuse to engage on these conversations and to put the money they need to put, right? Even though when they attend Beirut Pride, it's all for free. They eat for free, they drink for free, some of them pick up for free, obviously. And eventually they criticize Beirut Pride for free. So at a certain moment you're like, I'm sorry, but what is your contribution? Because I want to see a contribution.
How do you see all that we've been talking about? How do you see that in the international context? Because you're really deep into international pride movement, and today we're in Copenhagen, and you've been here before. Like, I know the struggles are very, very different, but they're also the same on different levels. How do you see that as a piece of a puzzle in the international pride movement?
Like, it's the same mentality at the end of the day. It's the same pattern. So technically what happened is, the frame of my arrest in 2018, many people who are involved in the Pride space and in Pride work read the news. You think that they should be everybody, but they are not. And I find it shocking because, you know, Pride organizers are leaders, right? They take to the public space, they create the logistics, they do the necessary communication to bring people in the public space. I'm sorry, but this is basic definition of leadership. You can't lead if you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't read things, if you don't engage, if you don't understand the socio-economic and the political context you exist in, if you don't read history. You can't do this work. It's impossible. You're a politician. You need to be many steps ahead. They do it in some instances, in some aspects, in security, let's say. They check on Google whether it is going to rain or not. But beyond this, not always. But a few of them actually who read the press saw that Beirut Pride had this arrest and this crackdown. And one of them is Frank van Dalen, who was in Amsterdam Pride, and he was also involved with Liberal Internationals, and then Liberal Internationals had a junior section for youth that was chaired by a Lebanese guy who's associated to a Lebanese party. The Lebanese party is not liberal at all, but they were part of this group. You know, connection happened, so they got to meet. They issued a statement. Frank also was a board member of InterPride, so he spoke to the co-president back then, Linda DeMarco and Brett Heyho, who also signed a statement that Frank wrote. And back then, Copenhagen Pride also, who was bidding for World Pride in 2021, also issued a statement. So there were some stuff like this, and then they invited me to attend the Human Rights Committee of InterPride to explain what happened to me, which I did, and to me that was very important. And I'm like, oh, perhaps I'm going to find community in the space of Pride organizers. And
did you?
I would, through some people. The others are I'm not going to say imposters, but I would not want to see them in the roles they are in. Anyway, in October 2020, I was elected co-president of InterPride. Obviously, it was very exotic to have somebody from the so-called Arab world. And I do work a lot. Back then, they were in the midst of reviewing standing rules and bylaws, so I was deeply into that as well. I started chairing the committee before that I was also chairing the committee that organizes the conference. So I was very much involved in the legislation of the organization and the structure of it. And when I became co-president, and I was not anymore in a possibility to nag that things were not working because I'm at the highest level of the organization. Here you're like, oh my God, there are systemic issues, and there are issues that should not exist. And here you start understanding how some people create a hierarchy of nationalities. You understand when people start using the excuse, like they start using actually a certain skin color or a certain ability or disability, or they start using a certain perception to justify behavior, to justify language. And many people dare not challenge them. And they tell you, I do not want to speak about this because I do not want to be called racist. So you find yourself covering and covering and covering and covering wrongdoings. And at a certain moment you need to say enough is enough. Because this is the importance of general meetings. When you go there and you see Pride organizers, you're excited. So the question is, where is there a separation, a cut between the membership, between Pride organizers, between our people, those we do, the work we do, and the others that we work with? And sometimes you need to take the wrong decision, you need to take the tough decisions. They may be wrong for some, but as long as you are aligned with what you're doing, you need to strike when we need to strike. And this is something we do and we do very well.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left. Let me see if there are any questions, if there are in the audience. Or we just keep talking. There are. Okay. Can we have a microphone?
Hello. Thank you. It's very interesting. You were talking earlier on about, I was a bit curious about, you were talking about that there was some funding and some organizations you wouldn't cooperate with. And I was wondering what kind and why is that so?
What kind of funding exists and why we what?
You were saying that there were some organizations and some kind of funding you wouldn't you didn't want to work with.
Yes. Listen, I believe, and it's a fact. You can't lead publicly if you are not a free person. And if you're not if you're taking money from people, you're not a free person at all. They will ask you to commit to certain things, not to speak about certain things, to attack some things. And this is not their place, because at the end of the day, the work we're doing, which goal is to contribute to the decriminalization of LGBT status. I'm the Lebanese one. I'm the one who evolved in, Lebanese, who evolved in this space, and we need to know how to position ourselves, how to engage, when to caress, when to hit. You can't do this when you're selling out and when you are, when you're just doing whatever you're doing to please the donors. Plus, also donors often come with a set of projects that they want to do and they expect you to apply. And this is another issue I have. I give you an example. In 2019, the Lebanese protest started, the revolution in October, and then around that time where people were not working, the country was in general strike, etc. There was a project that is funded. It was about the inclusion of LGBT people in the workspace. The organization that received this funding because they said that we will be working outside of Beirut. So for the funder, that was amazing. So you had people who were calling companies and factories, wood factory, metal factory, plastic factory, in poor spaces in Lebanon, asking them, "Hi, how are you? I'm calling you from this association, and I want to ask you, how is the LGBT community included in the work?" And the guy on the phone was like, "What is LGBT community? What's the name of your organization? And what are you talking about?" And the person on the phone would be, "You know, the homosexuals, the bisexuals." The person's like, "The country is collapsed. I don't have electricity. They are not picking the trash. What are you talking to me about?" I can tell you for a fact, if this person who received this phone call, now we need to do extra work for this person to accept to engage on LGBT conversations. There should be a bit of common sense, which doesn't always exist.
Do you have any other
It's a comedy show.
questions? You must have been very clear. There are no questions.
Yes. You know, the funny thing is everybody's smiling, actually. So,
This is leads me to the final question, because I quite like to end on a bit of a more positive note and a message of hope. And I've noticed that sometimes we debate, and then you get so-called Western world or the global North Pride that would complain about things and be very, because it is getting difficult everywhere, and the world is shrinking, and we feel the effect more if something bad is happening in Bulgaria. We feel it here, but activists and pride organizers are coming from a bit more difficult, their levels, environments, actually show more hope and more positive messaging than the rest of us. So how does that work?
this is not a question you can ask me 3 minutes before the end of the panel.
Yes, I can.
And I guess put it at the end for a point. You know, this really speaks to, you know, many people look at so-called the West for the ideas of democracy, hope, value, business, economy, etc. And then they say, the West has collapsed. The collapse of the West is this, is the mindset of the individuals in the West, is how people don't want to be working, how people have considered today in 2024 that LGBT rights are at the worst part of existence. No, not at all. I'm sorry. I'm not going to take the example of Copenhagen because I would say, Copenhagen is too amazing, but I'm sorry. No, even in places where LGBT rights are under attack and attacked, the situation is much more better than it was before. Much more better than it was before. I'll give you an example. When I was preparing my first TV interventions with, especially on live TV, and expecting that I'll have some people who will say, they start talking about homosexuality, then they want to have sex with dogs. So I knew that I want to engage with these questions without being triggered, etc. You go to YouTube, you watch TV interviews, talk shows in London, in France, in whatever, in the 60s and the 70s. It's the same question, it's the same prejudice. All you need to do is to translate it. Are you going to tell me that today, me preparing my show is more complicated than other people who did not have the reference I have? Absolutely not. Second question. In the space of InterPride once, we had somebody living in Washington, the state of Washington in the US, saying that, oh my God, we received threats and we have to stop our organization, and the FBI came and they asked me to leave the state, etc. And everybody collapsed, and oh my God, how bad it is, etc. I'm not saying it's not bad, but breaking news. One, you have the FBI. Second thing, the FBI is on your side, not against you. Hey, it's sad because it boils down to how people are engaging with life, how people are engaging with so-called privilege. And of course, everybody has different forms of privilege, and we all want to be more comfortable in life. But also at a certain moment, it's very important to take a moment, especially during Pride, to understand and learn all the evolution that we've been doing. I know that Copenhagen Pride, as well as other Pride, every year have exhibitions that offer retrospectives about the fight for human dignity for LGBT folks. It's important. And hope is here. Hope prevails always. It's the essence of life. You see it in nature, you see it everywhere. Life, by definition, its synonym is hope. Otherwise, it's death. And last time I checked, we're all alive. So what are we nagging about?
That was a beautiful finish to this conversation, and thank you for being here, and you are doing an amazing work. I'm sure everyone agrees, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kristine.
Thank you to the both of you.